Welcome to Decades of Horror, the classic era.
When Uranus enters the house of the planets, Asteroth will reclaim his instrument. Then the lifeless clay will turn against the master and intent on deceit and destruction.
Gruesome Magazine.
This is episode 99, recorded May 2nd, 2021. I am your host, Jeff Mohr. On this podcast, we cover the good, the bad, and maybe even the ugly horror films released since the beginning of time through 1969. In each episode, we'll discuss the monsters, spirits, psychos, and villains that have haunted movie-going audiences since the dawn of film history. And we are the Gruesome Magazine family of video podcast, which includes Horror News Radio, Gruesome Magazine podcast, Heroes, and the 3 Decades of Horror podcasts. Please subscribe, comment, or like on the Gruesome Magazine YouTube channel. You can also listen on audio-only versions of each podcast on most podcast apps by subscribing to both Gruesome Magazine and Horror News Radio. Also, we got some great news. It has come to fruition. In fact, it was probably already fruited before I knew about it.
Fruited?
Yeah. The Decades of Horror, the classic era, is partnering with the CLASSIC SCI-FI Movie Channel. And they will now include video episodes of the classic era available on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, the online website, and across all OTT platforms, as well as mobile, tablet, and desktop. You can find it on the web at classicscifichannel.com. And basically, it's a streaming service with classic sci-fi movies. And we're on there. Our videos are on there as part of the content. I don't know if we have to clean up our act or something. Or not. Some great movies on there, like The Leech Woman, The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The Mole People, 20 Million Miles to Earth with the Ymir,
Ymir,
4D Man. Yeah. And, Frankenstein's Daughter, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. So lots of stuff. Attack of the Mushroom People. So pretty cool. So check that out. I believe they have a 7-day trial period. So check that out. With me this week are my incredible co-ghosts. Are we still doing the podcast? Okay. First up is Whitney Kayatso, an accomplished artist, makeup artist, and writer. Whitney, how are you?
I'm good. I'm all right. Not throwing people off of ledges. How about you?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I can't vouch for that, but nobody saw me. Next up is Chad Hunt, co-host on Decades of Horror, the 70s and the 80s, film producer and director of 3 Havoc Productions, and a comic book artist and writer. Chad, dare I ask, how you doing?
Well, I've found out what happens when you finally put the Pillsbury Doughboy in the oven and cook him.
Oh.
He becomes possessed by a demon and throws, like Whitney says, throws people off.
I think he was a little overcooked, maybe. But
yeah.
Also with us is Daphne, the awesome, stupendous costume maker, who's likable as hell. And this is Daphne's pick this week. How you doing, Daphne?
I'm doing really good, thanks. Looking forward to talking about the movie. I found out I've been saying Golem and not Golem, so I already learned something.
That's okay.
Lord of the Rings ruined that for everybody.
Yes.
That's okay. I've been saying Uranus instead of so.
Well.
I'm not talking. Also with us, Joseph Perry, contributing writer to Gruesome Magazine and contributing writer to The Scariest Things when it was cool, Horror Fuel, and Ghastly Grinning websites. Fan of the movies, Videoscope magazine, the Drive-In Asylum zine, and Diabolique magazine, and co-host of the Uphill Both Ways podcast. Good to see you again, Joseph.
You too. I'm over emoting and playing to the back row, much like a certain character in this film.
And yeah, never mind. I'm glad you made it back from Uranus.
It was a short trip.
So,
Hey, wait a minute.
this is probably as good a film as any to give a spoiler alert.
It's a perpetual joke mechanism. It just keeps
it's only 100 years old. What can I say? So yeah, this was Daphne's pick. And as we march down or march up or whatever it is we're marching, wherever we're marching, we've gone through our 100th episode. We've done kind of a decade by decade countdown. So first we did Eyes Without a Face from the 60s. Then we did The Bad Seed from the 50s, followed by The Seventh Victim from the 40s. And then last episode was Island of Lost Souls from the 30s. And now we got the 20s, a silent film, which is The Golem from 1920.
That's such a cool poster. I love that poster.
It is
neat.
amazing, isn't it? From 1920, directed by Carl Boyza and Paul Wegener. Writers were Henrik Galeen and Paul Wegener. And I found out this credit to the novel was a falsehood, so forget that. The cast includes Paul Wegener, Albert Steinrich, Lida Salmanova, and Ernst Deutsch. Production company, Projections AG Union, or PAGU, P-A-G-U. Filming locations, the Berliner Union Film, which I assume is a studio in Berlin. Filming dates were May to June in 1920. The release date in Germany, the premiere was October 29th, 1920, and it was released in the U.S. on June 19th, 1921. Original title is Der Golem wie in die Welt kam. The Golem as it came into the world. Or actually, the Golem as it came into the world.
That's correct.
How many times will I do that? Synopsis. In 16th century Prague, a rabbi creates the Golem, a giant creature made of clay. Using sorcery, he brings the creature to life in order to protect the Jews of Prague from persecution. And as Daphne said, a very cool poster, which, you know, I really thought this looked really part of the expressionist movement. But then as I was reading about it, they were kind of claiming it wasn't as much as people thought. But still, that's really what the houses look like.
Yeah, when you're making your house out of mud, basically, they're going to lean to one side on their own.
Yeah.
Too much expressionism.
It was a world of mud and straw. So on this podcast, we start out by giving some basic details, which we just did. Then we'll get into our first impressions and then move on through into a general discussion of whatever trips our trigger, hopefully relating to the movie. You know, and we're skipping taglines, Chad.
Who's Tad?
Tad. He
my twin brother.
He reads the taglines.
He's made out of clay.
Taglines. They're really long. And we'll go ahead and read the first one anyway.
Oh, throw me a bone, why don't you? Which one you want me to read?
The first one.
Acting that stamps it as a masterpiece. Settings that bewilder and amaze. Dealing with the mysterious and the miraculous. There.
Go ahead and do the second one since there's only two.
Oh my God. Tad, come read this. The amazing adventure of the strangest figure ever filmed, unlike any production to ever reach the screen. Tremendous in its realism, awe-inspiring in its remarkable action, the wonder of the generation. Thousands of people, whole cities destroyed, action that will make you grip your seat. And say hi to your mother for me.
It's a seat ripper.
Well, it is. Never mind.
Now that
It is
That sounded like-
Uranus, or however it is.
Yeah.
Uranus.
so let's get into first impressions. And as we already said, this is Daphne's pick. So, Daphne, had you seen this before? And whether or not, what are your impressions of this?
I hadn't seen it before, but I've definitely saw stills from it. Just, when you're reading about silent movies and you see Metropolis and Captain Caligari, Dr. Caligari, and Nosferatu and stuff. I see pictures and stills from that, but I never saw the movie, and it just seemed really interesting. And I thought it kind of related to things that we were talking about with Moreau, and maybe other movies with monsters and arrogant people who think they can control things that we've been talking about lately. So it just seemed really interesting, and I thought I'd go with it. And I liked it. I had to see it I watched it a couple of times. I think it was the 75-minute version and then the longer version. And I really liked it.
Yeah. So, like a lot of silent films, especially from this period, there's a lot of different versions out there. And in fact, right off the bat, there were different versions because they shipped a different version to the US than what they released in Germany. So luckily, we do have a really nice restoration from F.W. Murnau organization in Germany that was put out in the US by Kino Lorber. All right. Very nice. Well, let's just go down the line here. Whitney, what were your first impressions?
Like Daphne, I haven't seen this one either, but I learned that there was a segment in a Simpsons episode of this character. I saw some artwork of the creature clay guy that we're going to talk about. But anyway, no, going back to this though, I can't believe I watched V before watching this. But no, this was really cool. Like Daphne said, you have the stories where you have a certain being of men, like we say in these stories, they think they can control something that is not human, and then it disperses in their own way and kind of develops their own mind and what they have to go on their own trip. So it was a fun little adventure, and I just thought it was quite magical and cool. Very, very beautiful to see, and I'm looking forward to talking about this more.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me what kind of effects they use in 1920, right? Mm-hmm. Mr. Taste the Milk of Chocolate.
Hello.
And
Dracula.
What did I say? My wife says I always trail off my sentences, so I just figured. Anyway. So what are your first impressions?
Hi, I guess that's my introduction. Okay. My first impression is that the rest of you didn't get the memo that Whitney and I did about wearing wine-colored tops today to coordinate the whole group together. But okay, indulge me for a moment, please, because this goes back to third grade elementary school for me. When we have the bookmobile come every week, there was a horror movie book on the shelf that I really wanted to check out. But the very stern bookmobile librarian said under no circumstances could I check that book out because I was too young. However, she was absent one week, and there was a substitute librarian on the bookmobile, and I checked the book out, and I kept it way overdue. And finally, when I returned it, of course, the regular librarian was there to yell at me, but I don't mind, because the Golem was one of the films in that book that instantly had a huge impact. The stills from it, I should say. And it took decades for me to see it. And I believe the first time I saw it is when I ordered it from Sinister Cinema, if anybody remembers that mail order company. And they carried a lot of films throughout the decades, but I ordered a lot of silence from them because they weren't available quite yet on VHS. So that's when I finally got to see the Golem, and I don't know what version I saw. I'm sure it was some, cut up public. I don't know if public access is the right word, but some type of version like that. And I've seen it since then, but it has been a while, and I love this movie. And I guess I had forgotten what a rampage the Golem goes on at the end. So I was kind of seeing that through new-ish eyes, because I remembered him being, an Avenger, right?
Mm.
And I forgot that he went into business for himself, to use wrestling parlance, at the end there. So I've got a lot to say about it, so we'll save that for when we go through our different categories.
Okie dokie. Tad, what were your impressions for this film?
Listen. I'm sure Joseph is probably the same. Our whole horror mindset is predicated on having read all the magazines like famous monsters and stuff like that used to come out when we were kids. And so the first time I ever knew of this movie was Famous Monsters had, where they would do articles and have little pictures of movies in there. And I saw a picture of the Golem in there, and was fascinated by, there was a little synopsis of the story that a man was made out of clay who would protect and defend this group of people. And, but there was a catch. The person or the demon that gave him life would later come to possess him, and he would rampage. I was like, wow, that sounds like such an awesome story. And it's an interesting story. So I go and show it to my dad. I think I was very little, and I couldn't read the whole story by myself or whatever, and ask him to take it. Wow, Dad, look at this. This he gets made out of clay, and he's and the demon's going to possess him later. And I want to see. My dad was not ready to put up with any of that foolishness from me. So I think that issue got thrown in the garbage, and
Oh no!
So I moved on to liking things like Kiss and that kind of thing, which he also
made
hated.
him feel better.
Yeah, he also hated that too. But this is a really, really cool character, and this movie is really, really good. And so just from the first time seeing it and hearing of the story, I was intrigued by it. And it's been adapted in a lot of different ways. The Roddy McDowall movie, even Marvel Comics put out, I think it was Supernatural Chillers or Supernatural Thrillers, and it was called It, the Living Colossus in there. And so they did their version of it too back in the 70s, I think. And so I've always been close to this character, but never able to see the movie until later in life. And I think I saw it like 10 years ago, and I just love the whole idea behind it, and the whole and it's weird that it's never been really adapted in a mainstream sort of way, to the point of the story can be told, better, I think. And it's almost like the first superhero too, if you, in a way, this big hulking being created by basically black magic or whatever they were calling it, then, and being brought to life and as the avenger and the defender of these people. So this movie, even though I hadn't seen it at the time, made a big impression on me, and I always thought of it as a horror film, and love it. I just love it, even though it's probably not seen by some as actual horror, but more of like a fantasy or whatever. Monsters on the Rampage means horror to me.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
And I'd like to say there's no way he came through that tiny hole in the top of that roof. No way.
But it made a great visual.
But it made a great visual.
He's like,
Yeah, his head
He was
pops
like
up
this.
like, how am I going to get out of here?
I'm pretty sure he got stuck halfway. And he goes, when I get out of here, I'm going to throw you off this roof.
Yeah. Well,
With that
All
face, even.
yeah, he had a great
He had a great face.
kind of grimace or whatever.
For radio.
I like this a lot too, and I think what's really cool is the entire like village they built. Somewhere I read they put like 57 buildings there now, probably facades, but still, it's a lot. And the whole sort of, creating the mythology. And I know there's this mythology goes back a few centuries actually, but there was a book that was written like early part of the decade, like 12, 13, something like that, maybe 15. That had a creature like this in there, but it wasn't nothing like this story. So that's why I said it really wasn't based on the novel. It just had the same main character, So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So let's, one of the things I want to talk about like first is legacies of this. So I have some thoughts on that. In terms of what is this the precursor of? What other stuff uses? Chad mentioned some of them, but I think, you got your basic, he's not a mad scientist, but magician, mad scientist, creates evil creature to do his bidding, loses control of evil creature, then either gets killed by evil creature or has to kill the evil creature. One of those are like your two options.
The villages get set on fire.
Oh, I just think it's really appropriate that we're doing this right before our 100th episode. We reveal who that's about. It's
They wore the same shoes anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Quiz question. You know what those kind of shoes those were on Frankenstein?
Birkenstocks. I don't know.
I thought maybe Chad would know. I just heard this. They were asphalt worker shoes.
Oh, I see how you would think I would know that now.
No, because you're like, Mr. Frankenstein, Mr. Special Effects.
Mr. Asphalt Layer.
No.
I've laid roads from here to North California, and I never wore those kind of shoes.
I'm sure you have.
But they had the big, thick heel sole to protect their feet from the heat.
The precursor of Doc Martens.
Yes.
So yeah, this guy's got the big shoes. Speaking of which, you know how tall Paul Wegener is without the shoes?
About 5'5".
6'6".
Without the shoes?
Without the shoes. Seriously.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That's
It didn't come across that tall.
The magician or the rabbi was pretty tall too then, because
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like the same size.
I didn't check the other height. Well, he was probably half a head taller than everybody else, and I don't know. Maybe everybody in the movie was tall, but they said one of the reasons they picked him was so tall. And we have no way of checking this, but it could be like basketball rosters where they just add a couple inches to him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else? So this is something I heard or read that the first issue of Hulk was he like gray.
Mm-hmm.
So
the Hulk was basically created like Frankenstein. They wanted him to be a creature like Frankenstein, but it ended up being something else. So they made him gray, and it was due to a printing problem or something that made him. They said, well, it's going to work better if we make him green, so they made him green. So that's just one of those things. But yeah, he was originally gray. And years later, they returned him to the gray color. But yeah, there are similarities to the Hulk. They're Frankenstein, a lot of those kind of guys.
Well, this was another one I read was the very first issues of Iron Man. He was kind of gray, but he was very chunky and
he was like steel metal gray.
Yeah, and moved like that. So yeah, there's a lot of.
Very much like he appeared in the movie at first, the gray rabbi.
Yeah.
Type armor. Yeah.
So it feels like there's a lot of legacy that comes from that. But Superman too, right? I mean,
he was never gray.
No, but he couldn't be destroyed.
Oh yeah.
Although Superman, instead of removing the star off his chest, you had to come up with kryptonite, but.
Well, then Ultraman.
He had to come and save the
heart thing.
Save the world, right? So, all right. Anything else that you can think of?
Well, I was thinking of it's not movie related, but they made a movie of it. There's one of my favorite authors is Terry Pratchett. He's a British author, and he has a golem in his worlds that he builds, but he kind of links it more to it is a golem, but it's kind of more robotic, and then he incorporates Asimov's rules of those rules of robotics as far as like what they can do and if they can harm people. He kind of brings them both together in his character of the golem, which is called Block 9 or no Pump 19. So,
okay.
And he's plays it in a movie called Going Postal. So, like The Simpsons, it's in other stuff too.
Yeah. Any music references, Joseph?
Not that I can think of off.
I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, right. If it's not Iron Maiden or another power metal band, probably hasn't been done. I'll have to research that.
Yeah, there was also just to remind everybody, we did episode 6. We did It, or I think it's also known as Curse of the Golem, from 1967, and Roddy McDowell. That was Joseph's pick, if I remember. Our 6th episode, which follows the mythology pretty closely, even though it can be silly in places. But yeah, that's a fun one too.
It really is, yeah.
And we did a movie. Yeah, oh, he's awesome. You should hear Chad impersonate him.
Oh gosh.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
It was Tad.
Yeah.
Tad did it. I forgot.
Tad coached me on that. Yeah.
Tad is Chad's Asteroth.
He created me, and I'm
There was a movie a couple of years ago called The Golem.
Talk to him every once in a while.
Right.
Please, Jeff, go on.
That was set a couple of years ago, and the golem was a kid.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
That was a pretty decent movie, I thought.
I ran across that one looking for this one to watch again, and it actually looks pretty creepy.
It is
the one with the kid. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was from like 2019 or something, or 2020.
That sounds right. We reviewed it on Gruesome Magazine podcast. Joseph probably saw it at some festivals, maybe.
As part of
Or
a
not.
festival online.
Yeah.
But I also want to mention, speaking of festivals and Golem movies, that there's an Australian short film that's doing the festival circuit right now called Golem. And it's only 4 minutes long, but they pack a lot into it. And there's a very cool, now I'm forgetting the term. Help me out here. Stop motion animation version of the Golem.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so if you get a chance to see that, it's pretty cool.
So
I just reviewed it for Gruesome Magazine, actually. Now that
yes, you did, and I saw that. Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
I
And
just
went
read that
looking for
actually.
it,
It's
and
good.
I
Thanks.
could not find it anywhere, so I will have to wait for that to.
Yeah, it's on the
show up
festival
on-
circuit, so it'll be
And
out.
that festival's in like the first week in May, right?
Actually, yes. The Warp Dimension Film Festival is online, and go to the link in the article. I believe it's only a very small amount per day, so you could just watch all the shorts that day.
Oh,
And I
okay.
believe that's on Sunday, which is a pretty long block. So yeah, there you go.
And it's just called the Golem too.
Not even just
Golem.
Golem, and it's very short, right? Like 4 minutes.
Tricksy titles. Tricksy movie titles.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of the.
Worth your time.
Yeah, I looked for it. I'm going to keep an eye out for that. Let's take a look at some of the people involved in this. So it's listed as two directors, Carl Boyce and Paul Wegener. And the thing I read was that Carl Boyce was he was sort of the technical director. And so working on lining everything up, the sets, the buildings, the people to do that, the cinematographers, the quote unquote trick shots, that kind of stuff. And that Wegener directed the actors. So any comments about the direction, or what did you think about the way this was put together? And Wegener is like Mr. Everybody on this one, kind of like current independent films. He was producer, director, writer, and I'm pretty sure he did actor. That might be the end of it. All right.
Wait, just a minute. I'm checking something before I open my mouth. Go ahead.
No, there's just great people. Everybody involved in this movie, when you look through the German cinema of the time, they're just interwoven all through there up till modern, up till the 50s, 60s, and just crossing each other's paths all the time. There's several of them in here that we can talk about. But Joseph, what were you going to say?
Well, Wegener played the Golem too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was just thinking if he was in costume and directing, how that must have been. But all right, if we assume that we have two different directors, Wegener for the actors and Boas for the technical things, well, both are extremely well done, both of those aspects. We have that wonderful expressionist. They called it, the ghetto in the film, where the Jewish folks lived, and that was just amazing. And the interior of the rabbi's home, was incredible. Why he needed a spiral staircase like that to go up to the top is beyond me. When he could have had a straight shot.
It was a load bearing staircase.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. So the technical aspects, of course, we don't have sound design or anything like that to talk about, but the visual aspects are fantastic. And I think the actors all did a great job. And I kind of mentioned during my little introduction about playing to the back row and over emoting, but that's part of silent film. They were transitioning, they meaning a lot of the actors and the filmmakers, from stage to screen at that very young point of cinema, and also didn't have words that they could use, that is voices. So we had Wegener doing something actually that's different from other Golem films. I think most of the ones that I've seen that we've just mentioned a few minutes ago, the Golem is pretty expressionless and emotionless. But here, Wegener's totally going for it on some of those scenes. But I think that brings a lot of humanity to the character. And also going back to the Frankenstein references, the very first the first Universal Frankenstein film. We have a lot of parallels there too, like with the little girl and the flower. Excuse me. First is the maiden and the flower. Okay, where we first get a real feeling that maybe Golem has some humanity behind him, and then closer to the climax of the film, with the children playing, and then he is interacting with the one very young girl. So I'm kind of going off in different directions that we haven't started talking about yet, but I'll just leave that as an introduction. So let me try to wrap that back up to the direction. I think that Wegener did a very nice job of humanizing the Golem character, and this is probably the introduction to that character for most people, I would imagine, who were not and still are not familiar with Jewish folklore and how the Golem plays into that. So both directors did a fine job, I think, on that.
I loved the set design too. Just like what everybody said about the architecture is amazing. I love that giant gate. Just how huge it is. You really got a sense of how big it is, and that bar that comes down that Warden has such a heart. I mean, I loved that gate. And I don't. The thing that really struck me at first was, like the lighting and stuff that we've talked about, and the architecture and the organicness of the house and everything around it. But there were some really interesting shots that I liked a lot that were kind of like landscape types, with having the dark of whether it's the buildings or the gate or the castle, it being dark and black, and then the light from the fire or from something that they're focusing in on. I thought all that was really pretty. It was really interesting. And then there were a couple of times when he was showing kind of just the daily life here, where there's just like a cat walking across the roof. So some stuff was really kind of stylized and abstract, but then there was these kind of more natural, organic type things to it, or just kind of like daily life stuff that
I definitely thought about when you were, Daphne, when you were just saying how with some of the set designs like being stylized, especially with fire, and I thought about it just now about with the scene where the rabbi takes the Golem to the emperor, and the crowd control is really cool to see how the crowd is in there, and then he's doing that presentation of his people and the Jews, Hebrew people, and then all these things start happening, the destruction of the set, and then some other things going on. But I'm going to back it up to where I know he started to conjure up this thing, and there was some fire and flares, and the control in that atmosphere with that kind of direction is, I feel like there was so much going on there's a lot to really take in. It was pretty magical all in itself in that with that feel.
And I love the way they incorporated humor into it as well. I mean, you've got a guy that conjures up probably the most powerful creature on earth. What do? The next day you send him grocery shopping.
Yes.
Yes.
And then you got the little guys going, just put everything in the basket every day and he won't hurt you.
Right.
You know, that was hilarious. That was just hilarious. And the golem's like, it's true, I won't. If you just fill out.
And he didn't tell, he just did his thing, and I guess his daughter, she doesn't know anything, and he's like, oh, it's just my servant, my new servant.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all.
That was hilarious.
He walks in and they all look shocked.
Yeah, they're all. He's just holding a list in their face, like.
Right.
So, Wegener, by the way, did this was his third Golem movie.
Oh.
He did one in 1915, and then he did another one called The Golem and the Dancing Girl, which
I think are those lost movies now?
Well, I think someplace I read that they were lost, but then they thought that the first one, the 1915 one, was like on YouTube, but the Golem and the Dancing Girl was lost. But it was supposed to be a comedy, and they said of the type like Abbott Costello beat Frankenstein, which seems like a big jump. But hey, I'd love to see that.
Oh, Golem, you're such a cod.
Yeah.
What are you going on about?
Now, the question is, how do you do that in an intertitle, right? In a silent movie.
Well, that's kind of like what the guys at the Rose Festival were doing, the musicians, how they were. Joseph was talking about the over-the-top acting.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff. That was so funny.
Everybody had a chance to shine. Yeah.
So he's in Wegener is in a movie called The Magician, which I had not heard about before, but it sounds kind of interesting. It's a 20s silent film. And for some reason, you can never find it when you want to look something up. There it is. Sorry. These synopsis crack me up. A magician alchemist seeking to create life finds that he needs the blood of a virgin to continue his experiments. He sends out his dwarf assistant to pick out the right girl.
Okay, I want to see that right now.
That's never been done before, right? No, that's what I thought.
I'm going to change my next pick to that one.
How come I haven't seen that? Anyway, Wegener is in that. And some other stuff. The Pied Piper, he did a famous one about a student from Prague, which is also, it's got a doppelganger thing going on with it. So that might be interesting.
Hearing about that, yeah.
That's a fairly well-known one. All righty. Well, we kind of started jumping into, we keep talking about the sets and the buildings and stuff. So art direction, a well-known German architect named Hans Polzig did the design.
Wasn't he the villain from Die Hard?
He might have been. But he had he made a statement that in his view, cinema should not be about the familiar. So there should be nothing in the movie visually that would remind you of everyday life. So that's why these buildings are so wacko, I think. That was part of his thought. Plus, if you notice, everything's made of mud and straw, just like the Golem, right? There's crazy. And And then the other guy listed under art direction was the guy that built it, Kurt Richter, who was supposed to be equally, I guess if you're using mud, you can make stuff with all those weird curves and things, but good luck building a support structure in that. I mean, I was thinking that stairway was like, remember all those, the invisible engine or the invisible man, those models? It's like the invisible staircase. It's half cut away so you can see how, here's how the stairway really works.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was like a slice.
That stuff is genius. And then a name that we know mixed down in the art department, set designer, uncredited, Edgar G. Ulmer.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So, and I'm trying to remember, I thought we did multiple movies that he's directed. But The Black Cat is one. 1934, Lugosi and Karloff. I'm looking real quick because I thought he did a bunch of stuff in the 50s.
Yeah, one that we wouldn't do on here because it's not horror, but it's one of my favorite films, and it's also one of my favorite film noirs is Detour.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
It's one of those names that keeps cropping up. Well, and he got his chops from, in the German silent films. And anyway, I thought that was interesting. Okay. The writer of this, Hendrik Galien, who also did The Student from Prague, but also Nosferatu. So another guy that kind of and I know there's other ones in there. I just picked out a couple quick ones that he was also well-known, somebody that was used quite a bit. And I don't know, it's interesting to me about writing. It had to be a whole different thing to do writing for silent films.
Yeah.
I would like to have seen a script.
That's a good point. I'm trying to imagine how you would.
Yeah, because in some scripts with screenwriting, some of the descriptions that are written are sounds and some of like where you would not only execute a certain scene and the description and the character and what they're doing, but the sounds somewhere in the background of it. You would say, okay, insert shot of this, and then a bang from another or something or another. I guess it just depends on the writer. But with this, yeah, it is a different outlook on silent film.
Yeah. Waxworks is another one that he wrote that we've talked about doing, which may be one of the first anthology films. I'm trying to think of what else. And then what we want to get to, so this is, I love how this happens, but two different film historians said two different things about the cinematographer are listed as Karl Freund and Guido Sieber. And they, the art historians, and I forget who said which. I think it was Tim Lucas said that it was kind of like the directors that Sieber did the technical, like the trick shots, and Freund did the, the actual cinematography for most of the film. But then later on, this other one, Steve Haberman, said that according to Paul Boyce, that Sieber got sick and had to leave. And so and Freund didn't like doing what he called trick shots. So Boyce was left to set those up and get those done.
Freund, we all know from, he went on to Universal to do Dracula and The Mummy.
Yeah. And I've got a couple of things here of him. One of the ones that that's him directing Zeta Johann, the second picture, Zeta Johann, from The Mummy, which they didn't have from all accounts, they didn't have a real positive relationship. But then he did 3/4 of the he was the directing cinematographer, or the managing cinematographer, or whatever, for the I Love Lucy show in the 50s.
Mhm.
Love it.
Yeah. Cool.
And just in terms of what we've done these movies that he either directed or was cinematographer on: Dracula, Mummy, and Mad Love, which I think we mentioned. And then these are some other movies that he was cinematographer on: Metropolis, Murders at the Rue Morgue, The Good Earth, which I think he got an Oscar for. And then A Guy Named Joe, which is one of those, the guy dies and the angel comes back and helps his old girl find a new guy kind of thing, in World War II. And this other one's for Daphne.
Thank you.
The Thin Man Goes Home.
Yay.
And
back
Key
to-
Largo.
Mhm.
So,
Going back to I Love Lucy. No, seriously, didn't that sitcom revolutionize the, what is it, 2 or 3 camera technique?
Yeah, they did. He did something in that. I
Mhm.
remember we
Yeah,
talked about it.
Yeah.
yeah. A
So
3-camera
Freund-
technique that they used to
Right.
shoot those live television shows. And
That's still
I think
used.
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
to-
He got an Oscar, I think,
Currently.
for Good Earth. He got an Oscar for technical merit. I don't know if that was for that. I'm not sure what. And I don't even know if they call it an Oscar, an Academy, Motion Picture Academy Award for technical merit. So, yeah, he was pretty well known, I think, in terms of what he was doing. And he does a great job in here. Think of all the shadows and stuff in this.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
light coming through those odd-shaped windows
Yep.
and then falling down across stairs and things.
Mhm.
That was just awesome.
He was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And the way that with the demon, the way the demon's head came out of the dark and
Yeah.
all the fire and the little like fireballs that were going around.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When
Great stuff.
Asteroth's head came out of that smoke, I was like,
I know, it
I was
so
like,
awesome.
I was like everybody in the village going,
That had to have been some influence on the Pazuzu face from The Exorcist.
yeah,
Yeah, so much.
Oh,
And then how the words
Yeah.
came out. I like
Yes.
that,
That was- yeah.
special effect.
That
That
was-
And
was
they were also in the lightning. That word was in the lightning.
I read that, but I got to see it again because I didn't notice. I didn't pick that up on
oh,
that.
I missed that. I'll have to check that out. Well, I couldn't figure out how they got that ring of fire to come through the floor. I mean, I read about how they did it, but it doesn't make sense to me. I just
It was so cool.
and also how they did the him sitting back or standing up straight.
oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, pre Nosferatu, right?
I rewound that several times and couldn't find any
Oh, cool.
wires or anything
Mhm.
showing. So
And how he got through that hole in the roof. I still don't get out of
Yeah.
it.
yeah. Well, I was just thinking about that, Chad. When his head comes through there, that's a precursor to, well, first thing I thought of was Creature from the Black Lagoon coming out of the water.
Oh yeah.
Ah.
So many horror or monster movies where something or somebody comes
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
slowly out.
Nosferatu coming out of the hold of the ship too.
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That and Disney, Snow White, you think of the witch, like
Yeah.
just looking around.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, that they know a good thing when they saw it.
Yeah.
Well, this is something I didn't think about, but when he throws Florian off the tower, they said to actually get that perspective shot was harder than we would think of now because the cameras were so big and clunky back then.
Mm.
Oh,
To lean
goodness.
clear out over there and get that shot would not have been trivial. I don't know if they had to build something to hold it or what, but
And that was an awesome scene.
That
Just-
really was.
Yeah.
That was so. I mean, just like you said, the height, the sizes of the buildings, and how it was just so violent and intense. It was
Mhm.
really, really powerful. That was a really good scene.
I didn't buy it. The building was leaning over so far he could have crawled down the side of the building without falling down.
Okay.
Gravity.
that's but never run upstairs to get away unless you're
No.
No.
someplace where you can run across a roof for blocks.
Well, he's probably figuring, he'll never get through that hole in the roof.
He might have.
Yeah, right.
who knows?
A very small side note that I'm going to mention now because I don't want to forget it later. I'm not sure who else noticed this, but I love how Paul Wegener did not break character as the Golem when a fly kept landing on his hairpiece or whatever that was.
He probably
yeah.
couldn't feel it, right?
Oh, I didn't notice that
I
either.
didn't see that.
Oh, yeah, there was
Just
one
wanted to make
shot.
sure I saw. Yeah.
I forget what shot that was, but yeah. Fly lands on his. Well, it was
lands,
clay.
flies away and comes back. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was clay. There's no nerve endings.
Well, and the scene that we were just talking about on the rooftop,
Yeah.
I love the reaction of the rabbi's daughter and the rabbi's assistant. They immediately showed, as soon as they saw what was happening, they were horrified, but they didn't know what happened yet. They just knew that Florian was missing.
Yeah.
Right? And he should have been up there. And then the next shot we saw was the Golem looking down at what he had done. And I thought, wow, that's really effective.
Yes.
Because what they would have seen first was not what we saw first, which was him looking down. Toward the
Right.
ground.
Right.
And then you see the squire at the bottom in that after shot. Like, yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He had it.
Garbage day is Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, Florian did have it coming. I really wanted to punch him.
Yeah, he was a jerk.
I wanted to punch all those sycophants in front of the emperor.
All of them hitting each other in the eye with the feathers to turn around and smack the other guy in the face with it.
Yeah. What's with that? I got a hat that's like 1.5 feet tall, and then I stick a pheasant feather on top. What's that?
Hey, it was the fashion.
Yeah, I guess it was to show his status, his class.
Right.
So I'm a squire, and he's trying to like wound his daughter, and I wanted to slap her too.
Yeah. Well, let's I didn't get a picture of the guy playing Florian, but he was
Good.
he was good. Well, I'm trying to. So he was pretty prancy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And he obviously wasn't gay. I'm not using it in that term. I think that was kind of a thing of being part of the court back then.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? But boy, oh boy, when he comes into the Rabbi Lowe's place, right? And Rabbi Lowe comes up and points to him at here's a chair. Here's our our chair of honor at this table, and he just goes
Right.
someplace else. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was cool the way they cut and edited stuff too, because things like the messages coming back and forth and what was going on at what time, they made that very understandable. I thought, like he sends her a message, I'm going to come when your father's, because they're not that far apart, right? This is just the Jewish quarter of the city, I guess. Anyway, so the actors, so we had Albert Steinrich, who plays Rabbi Lowe. He's the chief prestidigitator, and his daughter Miriam, played by Lida Salmanova, who he was actually married to at the time.
Oh wow!
Married.
And I don't know, what do you call that guy? The Famulus, who was like some thing they called your assistant, I guess. He was played by Ernst Deutsch.
He sure was.
Well,
it's hard to get a more German name than Deutsch.
Right.
This is true. But that guy was in the Luton film Isle of the Dead.
Okay.
Ernst Deutsch, and he's also in Third Man, the famous. Just a couple little tidbits there, but what'd you think about these characters? And I would agree with the woman. The character Miriam was like, well, in the first place, the position of the women, I'm not sure was there. Well, I guess there was some women at the Rose Festival, right?
Yeah.
But the women didn't have much say.
No, and she didn't have much of a role either. She didn't have much to say. The only thing it seemed like to have her role in her position, Miriam, it seemed like just to like have her be the compass of the mistake of what could go wrong if she was caught with this squire. And that's when things spiraled a little bit more with the monster, because of the familius, or whatever you say. He's after he overheard the two together, it just seemed like he took it into his own hands to talk to her father or something or the matter, and control it. He had the position to have the golem go after the squire, in a sense. That's how I perceived it.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, he just took it on himself, already kind of like a love triangle in his head, almost. And then
he knew he liked her, but she didn't know he liked her.
Yeah, right. And so he went and got the golem and said, this is a stranger who's brought shame on us.
Yes.
And and then she also, potentially brought shame on the family.
The whole way those two acted, love scenes together was, shameful.
He sits down on the bench with her and puts his hand across her.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell's going on? You guys need to go off in a corner somewhere and let the rest of the movie play out.
Which is what they did, and look what happened.
Oh my goodness, yes.
But I think Jeff was asking about the acting, and I think all three performances that we've got on the screen right now were great. Steinruck was pretty fabulous in his role as the conjuring rabbi. Is that right?
Yeah.
And as the villagers perceived him later, the savior of their village twice, but then he gave the real credit at the end, to, as he said, Jehovah saved them 3 times that day. So
thrice.
I think he didn't take He didn't take full credit for everything at the end.
Thrice.
And as much as the assistant character was kind of annoying, and it angered me that he kind of took it into his own hands. At the end, I feel like at the end when he asked forgiveness from her and like, I won't tell anybody, it was kind of like, I just didn't really know.
That was pretty bad, right?
She forgave him pretty quickly. They held hands. She didn't turn his hand away.
They should have forgave each other pretty quickly. One committed an affair, and the other one had him killed. Murder. I won't tell anybody if you won't tell anybody.
Can you forgive me? Yeah.
I won't tell Dad you were doing the hoop-de-doo upstairs if you don't tell him I activated the golem.
Because he will kill us, literally.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we have each other.
Let's stick together.
I have a question. Rabbi Lowe, does that particular look remind you of anybody in a 70s horror film?
Yeah. The Devil's Reign.
Yes. Ernest
Borgnine, yeah. I was thinking that through the whole movie. I was like, man.
I know. Once I saw that, I couldn't get it out of my head.
Who needs a golem when you got this guy? All he has is to walk the streets at night and everybody's okay. Everything's going to be okay. Back in your house.
It's almost, but when I think about the scraggly kind of elder look a little bit, it makes me think a little bit of the blind person in Frankenstein
Oh yeah.
also.
Oh yeah.
Huh?
The monk? No, I sometimes I get it confused with
The hermit.
Yeah,
the
You mean
hermit, yeah.
The hermit
The
from
hermit, right.
Bride. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that the guy that played Florian is Lothar Muthel.
Yeah. Let's call him that.
That guy was perfect all the way through. I mean, he just was him when he first gets there to deliver this decree,
Yeah.
and he's twirling this flower around. It just was,
right.
oh Lord, that was good.
A lot of arrogance.
I guess I should-
and,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
So,
what all that was
another-
supposed to come across as,
Yeah.
just arrogant aristocracy
yes.
type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One other little crossover is the woman at the Rose Festival with the rose
The
that
vampy.
she gave to the golem.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Greta Schroeder played the female lead in Nosferatu.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she
Wow.
was Hutter's. I think that's what the character's name. His wife. She's actually the one that saves the day because she lures Nosferatu into
Mhm.
supping too long on her neck before the sun comes up.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that word.
Is this the character who
Supping.
kind of cuddled up to the
I
golem
do.
and
Yeah.
did the silent screen vamp thing with him a bit? She did a great job in that little.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
she's the one that, and she also is like the first one to see him.
Yeah.
So she's the one that has
yeah.
the big wide-eyed look, and then
Yeah.
the other interesting one that I sent you guys a picture of is the jester, which I didn't even notice as I was watching it the first
Yeah.
time. Was played by Fritz Feld, who is the guy that he was always playing Italians that popped their mouth. He was always doing that.
Oh,
You
Lost in
recognize that
Space.
picture I
Yeah.
sent you? Yes.
Wow.
Tons of stuff. Tons of stuff.
Wow.
If I hadn't read that, I never would have made that connection at all.
Once I
Never.
saw the picture, I recognized it, but, but I'm like, there's no way I got it just from this.
Mm-mm. Nope,
And
not
then
from being
once,
the jester.
once you know it, if you watch the
Yeah.
jester, then from then on, he's working it, man.
Oh,
He's really
totally.
working
He's
The
getting in
whole
all the
time.
scenes there. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's a pretty pivotal scene. I mean, he's the one that got everybody to start laughing and
Yeah.
make
Oh,
the
that's
place
true.
collapse. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
he kept
yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I just expected him to be in it more after that because he was just like kind of constantly getting in there, kind of whispering in the ears of the emperor and who I think was his queen or something.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was in a lot of shots.
Everybody knows when a wizard is getting ready to cast a spell and says, "Don't laugh or talk." You get rid of the jester.
Right.
First
Sure.
thing. You don't let him
Basic
just
rule.
go around willy-nilly, just go around the crowd
But
trying to
even
get everybody
before
to laugh.
that,
That's kind of like when you start a podcast, you should mute Tad. So you can get it.
I've got him muted.
Okay.
He's been talking this whole time, but you guys just can't hear.
the first crowd shot, when they started the presentation, people are talking.
Mhm.
You can see
Yeah.
that's just shot from behind, but people are
Mhm.
looking at each other and mouths are moving. So
Mhm.
I would imagine that whispering is a form of talking in this
Yes.
case. So even if they're only whispering, they're already breaking the rule. And then, as everybody said, the jester just makes things worse, by
Mhm.
Yeah.
egging them on.
That made me think also about there's a couple things that I thought of when you were showing the rabbi and you mentioned Devil's Reign. I thought it was really cool in some of the research I was doing, them kind of talking about how this was after World War I, and people were seeing people that were immigrating from Eastern Europe into Europe, and kind of how that was the suspicion of the other is really depicted in these movies, and how it is interesting because you see that in that, and then you can see how that same kind of makeup, that same kind of character continues throughout movie history to represent danger or evil or something to be weary about. And so I thought that there was a lot of really cool stuff about that as well in there.
Yeah, and we covered some of that when we did Haxon. And then some of the characters in there that were meant to look just evil because of their age and everything. Yeah. And how they look.
Yeah. And also just how
span and carriage too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
yeah. And how the emperor was going to have exile all the Jews for doing sorcery, but yet then invites the rabbi to come and entertain him. I think he even said, what kind of magic are you going to entertain me with? And then just kind of so disrespectfully laughs and kind of
you strange illusionist.
Yeah, exactly. You exotic. Yeah.
It's a little less than complimentary.
Yeah.
So you make a good point, Daphne, because this was right after the end of World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic. So there was a lot of fear of otherness, just like happened around here. You want to blame the other. They're the ones bringing it in. And so this was the way they were looking at the Jews. Now, it's interesting to me that this is so close to the Nazis taking over the Germany, like 13 years later, they, I think, took power in 33. So, anyway, it does fit the time. There's tons of different versions of this, and there is a 102-minute version which everybody said didn't exist on Wicked Horror, which is a sister channel to the Classic Sci-Fi Movie Channel with Play Now Media. But I had a hard time seeing what we learned from that extra whatever it is 25 minutes that wasn't in this 75-minute version that we watched, which is supposed to be very close to what the original German release was.
Yeah, like I was talking to you off camera, I watched the shorter one and the 102, and I couldn't really tell you. I couldn't tell you what I missed, even though that's a lot of time. That's a lot of extra film.
So, Joseph, you got to get going here.
Yes, I do.
I'm sorry, I was let it slide a little. Any final comments?
Watch this movie. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun, but it's also, very amazing in a serious way too. And it's just gorgeous to look at. And yes, some of Wegener's expressions, are kind of unintentionally humorous to modern audiences. But again, if you think about the fact that, he's bringing humanity to this clay monster, and that, again, that's how a lot of the early silents were acted, a bit more towards being over the top, then definitely that can be kind of forgiven. So I really want to see Wegener's The Magician now, but maybe I'll watch it before scheduling it for one of our episodes. But man, that sounds amazing. So there you go. It's also, the Golem is also a good springboard for getting into some other silent horror as well.
I think The Magician is available on YouTube. I think
it is. I happened to check.
You just
I was
checked?
thinking about changing next choice into that one, but I'll stick with what I have because it's been a while since we've done the type of movie I have chosen. So,
what did you choose?
Rodan, aka
Oh,
Rodan.
okay. Why is that not?
Kaiju film. It's at the
Did you put
bottom
it
of
in the schedule?
I did.
All right.
Joseph.
Appreciate it, Joseph.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It was really good.
All right, brother.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Have a good one,
Take
buddy.
care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you.
We do love him, don't we?
We do.
He's a cool guy. That's what a guy.
I thought another shot I thought was cool was when Rabbi Lowe, after they get the word from Asteroth and he writes it down, and then when he gets the star off of the golem's chest, and then he walks up real tight to the camera and folds it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They swapped out the fake golem for Wegener.
Ah.
And he's up real tight against the camera. Like they said, like 3 or 4 guys come in and carry him out, and Wegener comes in.
That totally worked on me because I was totally focused on him coming up close to the screen. Yeah.
And it makes sense to do that too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like,
that was
what's
great.
he doing up close to the screen?
Yeah.
There
was another scene. There was another scene that I liked is when he was down in his little lab in the basement or whatever, and he first started working on the golem's face. There's a couple times when it was like eyes, like it was in there already. And I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Like he was frosting a cake.
Yes.
Leave me some air holes.
With a big glob of clay on his face.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any final comments from anybody that you had something you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to say?
Just a good movie. Just a great movie. And you guys know I'm not very fond of silent films because I can't fast forward through them without knowing what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just joking. but this is really to me one of my favorite silent films. Very well made. The creature's awesome. The story behind the whole myth and mythology and everything is just outstanding. So if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. And especially the versions that we have now, they look brand new. I mean, they look so crisp and clear. It's amazing. So yeah, you gotta check it out.
Is this more? I mean, is it more well known than I noticed? Because like I hadn't seen it, but I've seen Metropolis and Caligari and Nosferatu, and is it really well known and I just missed it, or is it something that people maybe haven't heard of? Or people maybe know golems, but this movie, even as part of the in that group of the German expressionists.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same question because, like I said, I heard that there was even a little bit of a pop culture reference to this, and even an episode of The Simpsons, which I thought, okay, well, this must be something, but it's one of those things that I missed too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Caligari and Metropolis are the more popular ones, where I think the Golem is more specialized. I mean, it seems like more sci-fi horror. Hardcore geeks know about it. The general public is not that familiar with it. But somebody says Metropolis, they're familiar with that iconic, robot and everything. So,
well, especially since it so clearly has such an influence on essentially monsters, some of the big ones, and it's I wish it had more. I wish it was more well known. I guess it seems like it's pretty influential.
Yeah.
Out of those legends, I think it's one of the lesser known legends in terms of I don't know how many people you could walk up on the street and ask them what a golem was, and without you had to preference that it wasn't in Lord of the Rings. But and some of these other ones like Nosferatu was, the whole Dracula and vampires thing is just so
that's true.
Part of the culture now. Werewolves, I don't know. Frankenstein is another one that comes up later. So I don't know. I don't know why it isn't more well known. I was looking at the history. The current version was like a 4K scan of the, and it is really awesome. Just like Chad said, it just looks like a lot of it's brand new. There's a few places where there's a couple little jumps here and there, where they were probably missing some frames that they couldn't find, but it just looks great. And maybe that's part of it too. If there wasn't a good copy available, there was, one of those things that when they get lost, then, or when they lose the copyright, then you get all these bogus reproductions out there that, can sometimes turn people off. I mean, thinking about, the same thing happened in music, and I got turned on to Robert Johnson in like the 70s on vinyl, but it was nasty sounding. And when they came out with the CDs, they had cleaned all that stuff up. And I know some people prefer vinyl, but it's, you hear the guitar a lot more clearly and all that stuff. So I don't know if that has a thing to do with it or not, but we did, I think I mentioned this before, but in the 70s, we did a Brian De Palma film called Sisters. No, I'm getting this wrong now. No, in the 80s, we did Dead Ringers. That was based on a book that was co-written by an author named Barry Wood. Wrote a book called Twins. She also wrote a book called The Tribe, which is about a golem. It's a horror, a current day horror novel. I believe it came out in the late 80s or late 70s, early 80s. But that was I remember that being pretty good. It's been a long time since I read it. I don't know if it's still out there or not, but there was a case of that mythology still being around. All righty. Well, that's it. Eh? We do have some feedback.
Yay.
Chad, you want to read the feedback?
Sure.
Somebody else, Daphne or Whitney, you want to read the feedback?
Yeah. Find. Okay. So.
Tad, get in here.
I said I. Okay, Tad. All right. So the feedback on The Seventh Victim by Tanya Taylor. After your episode of The Bad Seed, I immediately watched The Seventh Victim, not having seen it before. What a treat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Apart from the enjoyment I get from all the decades of horror podcasts, it's such a joy to discover something new when you feel like you have when you have almost seen everything. Thank you for another awesome episode. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor. Tanya, that's a great comment. We appreciate that. That's what we do too. I mean, we go through the same thing. We discover new things, and that's kind of what we're looking for, to get excited about new things or see them with a new set of eyes.
You want me to read the next one?
Sure.
Okay. It's from Thomas Salinas. As usual, you guys have great takes on this, but I disagree with you about Luton. Is this really even a Luton movie? What makes this movie is the direction and classic noir-esque cinematography, neither of which is his eye, really. And let's face it, other than the two Cat People movies, his canon is kind of meh. Pretty good at times, but not essential. I guess I dislike Luton because he is the 40s version of so many of the hacks that make movies and TV today for the masses. Kurtzman, for example, etc. I guess it's Wells's fault for not doing well at the box, but none of these movies touch something like Amberson's.
Well, I replied to I replied to Tomas. I appreciate the comment.
Yeah.
And I mean, I see where he's coming from, but we're gonna have to disagree to. And that hack thing. Anybody else got comment?
Well, I yeah. As far as the hack comment, agree to disagree kind of thing. So everyone has artistic opinions or opinions in general, but I mean, hey, I do appreciate hearing another perspective for sure.
Who's Kurtzman?
Yeah, I was trying. I had to look that up. So yeah, I disagree about that, and I think they absolutely are Luton's films because he had such a reputation of being, having his hand in it all the way. And after all, Robert Wise and Mark Robeson did their first directing roles under Luton. I mean, he's the one that gave them their chance. So, and if Luton obviously liked those dark, shadowy things, so bringing in cinematographers that match that, I think is part of his deal. Although I have seen, when we did Cat People, we talked about this idea of the Luton bus.
I remember you guys talking about that. Yeah.
The thing that shocks you into, there's some big noise. And I saw that called Something Else. In another article, and I don't remember what it was, but a different person, like the editor, maybe somebody that was something they came up with. So anyway, you never can tell. You never can tell who, where that stuff comes from. And Wells' biggest problem was having sort of like runaway budgets, I think, Ambersons, Citizen Kane, those are both great, but RKO just decided we can't afford to lose that much money anymore.
Well, I haven't seen tons of Luton stuff, I've only seen that one so far, but just doing the research on him, like you said, he seemed very involved and caring about his productions and kind of had his finger in everything and getting the right people there. And I feel like I really am glad that there's someone like that doing, B movies and getting it done in a short period of time really quickly. In some ways, that's really impressive as well, I think. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of his stuff.
Yeah, so I wasn't, before we touched on his films in the podcast, besides Cat People, I'd never heard of any of his stuff. But now that we've watched a few, I really enjoy them. I'm sure they're not all winners or whatever, but especially the last few that we've done, I've really, really enjoyed. And sometimes movies are about how good the story is. Sometimes movies are about how well they're shot and the artistic side of that, how a film looks. So you're going to get differing opinions on it, and that's okay. I mean, it's cool to hear different sides of the story and talk about why you like something and why you don't like something. It's fun to discuss. That's where this good discussion comes up. So it's cool to hear every kind of comment, whether you liked the movie or thought we sucked or thought the movie was good and we hated it. That's all good. It's all good. So.
Yeah, I commented on your guys' not liking The Hitcher in the 80s because I love that movie.
Yeah, that movie sucks.
I think I liked it.
You did.
That was my pick, in fact. Yeah.
That's my main reason for not liking it.
Yeah. I think you actually said something like, I think you guys are thinking too hard.
I think you overanalyzed it or something.
Analyze, yeah.
So I'm just saying, yeah. No, you guys were pretty easy on it, but yeah, people have different opinions, and thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. And Tomas is, I'm pretty sure he's commented before.
I recognize his
so
name. Yeah.
keep him come. That's really interesting. And I'll be honest with you. I would never try to compare something like the Magnificent Ambersons with a Luton movie. They're just so different.
Mhm.
You know, I just wouldn't even think of that. So I'll give you that. Magnificent Ambersons is sometimes considered by a lot of people to be better than Citizen Kane. So, all righty. I think that's it. Keep those comments coming.
Yep.
Subscribe. Be sure to check out the Classic Sci-Fi Movie Channel. It is available. I got it on my Fire Stick. And
They've got a lot of good stuff on there.
They do.
Got a lot of good stuff on there.
I could spend days just watching or weeks even just watching the serials he's got on there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's great. And then I watched, you know what? One of the ones I got these two lists of best horror movies for each year. You know, like for the last 100 years. I forget who did them, but two different organizations. And one of them had Bluebeard listed in the 40s.
Oh, wow.
And I'd never seen it. And I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it anywhere. He's got it. He's got
Awesome.
Bluebeard from like 1943, and it stars Carradine.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
And the idea of that a Bluebeard is a I don't know, they have names for him now, but like a serial killer of women. You know, it lures women in until. So it's a pretty creepy. Okay. So yeah, check that out. We're so happy. I noticed, I think we have 4 episodes up. We're catching up uploading those. So I think episodes 91 to 94 are on that now. Hello.
Is that our outro music?
It is. It's our new outro music.
We finally got
That's
outro music.
That's it for this episode, but every 2 weeks we'll be focusing on a specific film released between 1920 and 1969. Next up is episode 100 that we all kind of chose, and we're all fired up. I can't believe we're at 100 episodes, Chad.
I know.
And
been a long time, Jeff.
four years. What was it, 4? I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Thanks so much for letting me talk to you guys. This has just been such a blast. I love talking to you about stuff.
You and Whitney are great additions. I look forward to this every week.
Me too.
And then the episode after that is one picked by Joseph. We're not stopping at 100. No. Rodan.
Did we say what the 100th one was?
100? Oh, no.
Or did I interrupted you? Sorry.
What is the 100th episode?
We're not going to make it to another 100.
Daphne said, because she was gracious with her reminder.
See, now that's the problem. We got one that does that, and then the other one covers for the other one.
Well, nobody's covering for me. I know that.
And I'm the asphalt guy.
So what? Yeah. So, what are we doing for the 100th episode? One of the few super classic, well, like one of the few Universal horror originals that we haven't done.
One that I can't believe we've not done yet. But
I think we were all just waiting for somebody else to pick it, you know?
Yeah.
Well, it's cool that we all picked Frankenstein. James Whale's original Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Yay!
And it's especially interesting coming right on the heels of the Golem, which is has so much in common.
Yeah.
With.
We can compare shoes.
Nice.
Yes. Well,
shoes bad.
Check us here again in 2 weeks for another great horror movie of the classic era, as only decades of horror can do it. Hey, and go to our Gruesome magazine,
something or other.
Yeah, whatever.
That gruesome thing.
Say goodnight. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.